I'm gonna let you in on a secret. Bear meat is delicious, but I bet you've never had it. Perhaps it's the fear of the worms, the supposed gamey taste, or maybe you just find bears cute. Regardless, if I was to offer you a bear taco, you'd probably hit me with a polite no. The thing is, that hasn't always been the case. As recently as the 60s, it wasn't uncommon to find recipes for bear in your favorite cookbook. So, what changed? Well, the taste of a nation is a long, winding road, one that I followed, and it led me to a meeting with a food psychologist.
What I discovered is that there's an invisible belief system. I named this carnism.
And a reckoning with my own mortality over a dinner of snails, frogs, and rabbits. But before I could get there, I wanted to talk to someone who, actually eats bears. Enter Jeremiah Dottie, a big game-focused recipe creator who invited me to chat about how dangerous it is to really eat bear, what it tastes like, and the public's changing opinions on it over a plate of, naturally, bear tacos.
All right, you guys ready?
Let's do it.
Ready, let's go.
So, why can't I buy a bear in the store?
Well, you can't buy bear meat because there was an act called the Lacey Act in 1919 where all wild game became illegal to trade, buy, or sell.
Is there a reason that bear, isn't on the side of the line with beef, chicken, pork?
Well, you have to also look at the gestation period and the turnover, right? So if I'm raising chickens, within the first 3 months, that chicken can be slaughtered. For a bear to get to a big mature age, it's gonna take a couple years. We can't just have a pen of black bears sitting there. They just won't thrive.
Let's bring it back before the act was even enacted. Was it kind of common to eat bear, like in America?
You look at Native Americans, and they were one of the primary hunters of bear in North America. You go back and read Lewis and Clark's journals, they're eating bear. Not only that, but then you have this beautiful hide that you can make blankets out of, that you can make bedding out of, that you can make clothing out of. There's just been this Disneyized aspect about wild bear. And so, we can keep talking, but I say we get cooking.
Yeah, let's get cooking, man. Why don't you tell me what we're making today?
I like to kind of play on bear. Like, I was thinking it'd be kind of fun to do like a barbacoa. A lot of the cuts that you're gonna get off bear, they tend to be a little tougher. So doing this, it's gonna allow all the muscle fibers to get super tender. It's also gonna help with trichinosis, and that's just gonna be a parasite inside of the meat, but by cooking it low and slow, it's gonna kill all that bacteria.
Can you break down exactly how that works, how you kill the trichinosis?
One of the big misconceptions that a lot of people have is that, I've gotta cook that to 165 degrees to kill off all bacteria and foodborne illnesses. But we can sous vide it at 145 degrees for 24 hours, and all the trichinosis is gone.
So it's more of a function than it is like an absolute temperature. So have we worked that bacteria out of these other animals that we more commonly eat now?
Yeah, so it used to be really, really prevalent in domesticated hog. That's why our grandparents and stuff, when they were growing up, why they overcooked pork chops. But I'm gonna have you get into this bear. So I know I gave you some gloves.
One of the things that you hear a lot about bear is that it's gross. Why is that?
So just like us, right? If we're eating healthy foods, our body's producing healthy things. So if we're finishing that bear eating nothing but rotten fish, they're gonna be in a very, very fishy flavored type of bear compared to a bear that we're shooting in Idaho that's licking wild blueberries off the side of the mountain.
So if I cut open a bear that had been eating salmon for the last couple months, how would it smell?
It's gonna smell like a dead fish.
Oof. Let's try these out, man.
I've eaten this. My daughter's had this last night.
But I have not.
You haven't?
I haven't.
I tested this recipe out.
Incredible.
Well, you don't have to lie to me. If you don't like it, I didn't cook it. If you do like it, I made it. So, all right, cheers.
Cheers. That's fire. I actually like the texture of the bear too. It's almost like a chuck roast with those long kind of protein fibers. I wouldn't be able to tell you whether that's beef, bear, beaver, bison, if you asked me. And it does feel good to know that, I'm completely aware as to where everything is being sourced from. That little.
That's flavor saver. That's having the beer.
So we were talking earlier and you mentioned the Disneyification of bears.
Yeah.
Could you tell me what you mean by that?
I think it truly plays into this idea of we grew up watching Bambi. We grew up watching Snow White and seeing the critters come and dance into Snow White, right? We've taken animals from being an animal to making them humanized. We shot a bear and this one lady comes and she goes, I can't believe you just took that dad away from its children.
Right, I think that's something you hear about a lot, this concept about taking a life away from their family.
Yeah.
Which on the surface seems legit to me.
You look at the animal kingdom itself, it's not like, hey mom, hey dad, it's like, oh, you guys are messed up. A male bear will go and kill his offspring so that the female bear, she won't have any more babies as long as those cubs are with her. He'll go in and kill those cubs so that he can breed her. So this idea that the little cubs are waiting at home, shivering with like a little empty cup, it's not it at all.
So to you, a life is a life. That's not the case.
100%, they're animals. And it truly became this shift in the world where it's like, okay, once you start living in towns, the townsfolk didn't want to leave the town anymore. So they went to the butcher, they went to the hunter, they went to the trapper. I don't want to go trap my own beavers for fur anymore. I'm just going to go to you and have you do it for me.
Right, so as we urbanized, we
Just like
started
everything else.
mentally domesticating animals and developing emotional connections.
Zebra is one of the best meats I've ever eaten in my entire life. But again, if you tell someone to eat a zebra, they think of Madagascar.
Yeah, that's true. Jeremiah brought up an interesting point here because the logical reasons for the general public not eating bear makes sense. But when you look at other animals that aren't commonly eaten in America, the logic doesn't really hold up. Consider the horse. Horse is a delicacy in many countries. It's farmable, largely parasite-free, and apparently f***ing delicious. But here in the US, not only is it taboo to eat horse, it's literally illegal in multiple states. And this is not a law that's taken lightly. Take that from someone who tried to get some, allegedly. So what is it about certain animals that produce such a visceral reaction that we would ignore all their similarities to the animals that we regularly eat? And does the government really have a place in deciding whether or not we could eat them? For that, I needed an expert. And if you can believe it, I found a psychologist who specializes in the way people view animals.
People learn to classify a small handful of animals as edible. We're socialized to put animals into categories in our minds and to have very different attitudes and therefore feelings about those animals we've learned to classify as edible.
That's Dr. Melanie Joy. She's the author of a book called Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs, and Wear Cows.
What I discovered is that there's an invisible belief system. I named this carnism. It uses a set of psychological defense mechanisms that distort our perceptions and disconnect us from our natural empathy for the handful of animals that we've learned to classify as edible. And so that's why when we look at a hamburger and be like, oh my God, that's delicious. But if somebody told me that was actually made from golden retrievers, what I had just seen as food, I would now see as a dead animal. And what I had just felt was delicious, I now feel is disgusting.
What are the factors that determine that socialization?
There wasn't some intentionality behind creating the system. Humans started farming animals 7,000 or so years ago out of necessity at the time. But with the industrialization of meat back in the 1950s, all of a sudden, this practice that had started thousands of years ago became a way of life. And we learned to think of farmed animals as objects.
The most common thing that I hear when you talk about this subject with other people is that humans have eaten animals for centuries. Why should I stop?
Well, humans have eaten animals for centuries. And humans have also raped and murdered other humans for centuries. We don't use that as a justification for our practices today.
It's one thing to have a social norm dictating what people eat and what people don't. It's another thing to have the government step in. What's your opinion on that?
Well, the government has always had a role to play and a say in who should and shouldn't be killed. If we take it out of what's being eaten and focus on who's being killed, I think then it makes more sense that the government steps in and plays a role.
Now we're gonna hear more from Dr. Joy later, but first, I wanted to get some perspective from folks who've had different culinary upbringings than I have, because I think that's integral in explaining how and where we set our lines and what we will and won't eat. So I called up two friends to talk shop. First, Josh Elkin, a recipe creator that you might know who grew up in Montreal, where it's pretty common to find a menu that resembles a zoo listing. And Chef Aaron Habiger, a classically trained chef who's worked in his fair share of French kitchens serving up rabbit, frogs, and of course, snails. So these are not the snails that you would find in your backyard.
In theory, these are just a different breed. These are fully pasteurized and fully cooked. If I wanted to, I'd eat one right now.
Wait, we should probably do that.
Cheers.
Tastes like dirt.
Yeah. In your experience, have you had to convince somebody to try something that they're otherwise not familiar with?
All of the above. I don't see these as snails in the garden anymore now. My perception of them has changed now. So getting people to kind of embrace that, and after they try it like this, they're immediately sold. Oh my God, I don't know why I've never tried this before.
Have you had any adverse reactions to something you've served?
I did a charity dinner one time. I served squab to somebody, but obviously pigeons is one of those things people see and, you know, they get offended by it.
Think of like a New York street.
Exactly.
To drive this home, I left the claw on the little leg. People were less than excited. But that was my whole kind of point, was that this is an animal, it died, instead of just like forcing it into a little shape, putting it on a plate. And I guaranteed if I had done that, she would have eaten it.
I feel like you're touching on like the crux of the situation here, and that people don't want to be reminded that what they are eating is an animal. And there are certain animals that
Agreed.
make people astutely aware
Yes.
that this is an animal.
Gentlemen, bon appetit.
Night and day.
Yeah,
I enjoy this a lot.
it's damn good.
So here we have our beautiful frog legs.
Frog bussy wide open.
Jacksonville, Florida. These are from Jacksonville, Florida.
From the swamp.
They're from the swamps.
I remember there's a definitive moment in my life where I realized that I like food. I was working for a furrier selling fur coats. We went to this like super fancy restaurant and they served us tuna tartare. And I was like, holy shit,
This is raw meat.
this is raw and it's incredible.
So growing up, you didn't, horse and stuff like that is common in Montreal.
Yeah.
You're telling us that it's available in stores, right?
Like horse steaks. There was ground horse, there was duck always available, there was quail always available.
Amazing.
Yeah, I don't think when I saw it, I thought it was weird. I just thought like, okay, it's horse. Like, you have everything else here, why not have horse?
I think it's very interesting that something could be a delicacy or commonplace somewhere and just be totally foreign in other spots.
Well, food is very historic in the sense like it gets passed down, you know what I mean? Like sometimes people get like really weird about like what's traditional. And my whole thing with that is like, maybe it's not your tradition, but it might be my tradition.
Yeah. I guarantee that the French people that are watching this right now are watching me cook frog legs and are like, this is not how we do it.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna rip a little froggy leg off here. Tender, eh?
That's delicious.
Flavor-wise, pretty neutral.
It's just like a chicken wing where it's a blank canvas. You can
Yes.
do so much with this.
Super Bowl Sunday, gonna be a lot different this year. We picked up this happy little guy.
Man, it really does look like a cat. This
said
is
that-
bigger than your average bunny though.
I was all good until you called it a bunny.
That's the thing. When you say cow versus beef, those are two different pictures in your head.
You're absolutely right.
Even larger than that though, where do you guys draw your line?
My head, what I keep like going to is dog and cat.
For me, I saw an episode, Anthony Bourdain, they were eating seal. And they were eating some of the seal just straight raw. And everyone's face is covered in this deep, dark, ruby red blood. I don't know if I would have had the balls of steel that Anthony Bourdain had. That and predatory animals. We're at the top of the food chain. They're at the top of their food chain. Game recognized game.
Why does the morality not affect you with something smaller like this?
I think for me, a lot of it comes down to, I don't want to say necessarily brain size, but maybe like intelligent wise.
So to you, it's really the human-like element.
I think so.
Do you think that there are certain animals that shouldn't be eaten once we have the ability to choose whether they're eaten or not?
That's a good question.
It is a good question because like all I'm thinking about is that I would never eat a dog or a cat. But without sounding like a complete psychopath, I really don't care. I have no morality and like I don't feel any way about any of this stuff. A lot of people are always like, it has a soul. I can't eat anything that has a soul. I don't buy that. You're just gonna drink water and hope to survive forever? Okay, well, water's alive too. It's like a living organism essentially, right?
This parsley in front of us was alive at some point.
Well, but in farming, in this process, little bunnies and all kinds of other things were killed when they were cropping this stuff, going through the fields. Sure. There's lives lost in all these things.
It almost feels like if you're trying to come from the angle of not harming someone for your livelihood, there's no winning. But you do have some control over the amount of it. When we take a black and white kind of position here, are we just trying to make ourselves feel better?
Maybe you are, I don't really care.
Now, Josh might not care about the moral responsibility of all this, and that's totally fine. But I couldn't stop thinking about this. So when I got the chance to ask Dr. Joy about it, you best believe I did.
I mean, I guess the question is, do we want to be causing unnecessary suffering and harm? For many people, it doesn't feel realistic or doable or viable just to stop eating animals because, eating animals is baked into traditions and relationships, but it's not all or nothing. I mean, people can reduce their consumption with basically the awareness that the fewer animal products I eat, the less harm I'm doing in this way, at least, in the world.